What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are taking a look at Giratina VSTAR, and this is in the form of Lost Box. So we are taking a look at Lost Box Giratina today. Giratina having an insane attack, hitting for 280 damage, fueling your Lost Zone by putting 2 energy in there, and then once you're at 10, you gain the ability to use Star Requiem, where if you have 10 or more in the Lost Zone, you just KO anything. So super fantastic. As the past few days have shown, we are using that Lost Box engine. So we are using the Comfeys with the flower selecting. We do have the ability to use Sableye in case we run into VMAXs and want to clean up KOs from the Giratina. We are using that Radiant Greninja in order to set up some damage or draw us a ton of cards. We are playing Path to the Peak. Path to the Peak is fantastic in this deck as there's no abilities that you shut off yourself except for Greninja, but there's a point in the game when you don't really need Greninja as much anymore. And then we are playing the 4-colorless experiment. There's not too much to really talk about with this deck. You just set up and hit hard. There's some sequencing you might have to do, and actually in today's video I made a very big misplay that I didn't get punished for, but in most times don't make those misplays because you do have the chance to get punished. So with that being said, the deck list is showing up right now just so you guys have a full clean view, and also keep in mind that the deck list is in the description if you guys want to copy and paste it into Pokemon Trading Card Game Live. But with that being said, I want to thank you guys for all of the support, and if you guys can just do me a favor, that would be awesome. If you can like the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and if you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. Let me know down below what you guys think of Lost Box Giratina. That being said, I will catch you guys in the gameplay, and after the gameplay, there's a small announcement, so if you want to stick to the end, just keep that in mind. But again, thank you for all of the support. Enjoy the gameplay, and I'll catch you guys later. Alrighty, guys, getting into game number 1 here with Lost Zone Giratina. Hoping to be able to pull off some great sequencing within this. And I just want to say real quick, sometimes my turns take a little bit longer because I want to make sure I don't misplay and I can sequence properly for you guys to learn and explain my plays as I go. So sometimes it may not play as fast as usual just because, you know, I have some commentating to do as far as this goes. And I want you guys to be able to learn because not only is this channel for you guys to watch and enjoy, it's so that way you guys have the ability to learn and potentially better yourselves when it comes to playing Pokemon card game. So I just wanted to put that out there real quick. I got a comment of someone saying that I was playing slow, and I just wanted to make sure that I cleared the air. So this start is not looking as great as it could be. If we do draw into something like a Comfey, we can actually, you know, start to set up, and it seems as though my opponent is playing a Lost Box variant as well. Now, thankfully, if we are playing against something like Charizard providing these sleeves, we do gain the ability to actually use Star Requiem and kind of benefit from that, putting my opponent in an awkward spot. We do have Mirage Gates as well, meaning we can potentially set up a Water Shuriken, or I'm sorry, a Moonlight Shuriken. So my opponent going for the flower selecting here, getting rid of a Mirage Gate themselves. There is another Comfey, so they're going to be able to retreat, get 2 down, and they are playing the fire energy, so this is safe to say that it is something along the lines of Charizard. So we'll have to quickly figure out what we're going to do. My opponent playing Magma Basin as well, which is interesting. So there's the Charmander going down, another Charmander. I understand the split in the Charmanders. My opponent going for 3 of them, which is kind of insane to think about. So we do top deck a Psychic Energy, so the first thing we'll do is use the concealed cards, getting rid of one of these Psychics, drawing us a Colress as well as a Manaphy. The Colress, not bad at all. We can use that Colress and actually grab a Battle VIP Pass. We'll grab a Giratina, and then I don't think I'm going to need the Grass Energy just yet, so, yeah, I'm going to need this Colress, so grabbing these 3 seems fine with me at the moment. We do have access to Super Rod as well in case anything happens. We can bench the Giratina, go for that Battle VIP Pass, grabbing Comfey. We'll grab the double Comfey because it means that we have a pivot option to fuel the Lost Zone even more, which means now we can use the Comfey. Use that flower selecting And we get Boss's Orders and Giratina VSTAR. The Giratina VSTAR isn't a bad option to grab, but Charizard isn't going to be able to KO us until we do get to 2 prizes. The Giratina VSTAR just adds the extra little layer of protection there. Let's see. Considering I have 1 Giratina VSTAR gone, I'm kind of forced in this situation to grab it. Just because if my 3rd one is prized, it's going to be a little bit awkward. So we'll go for the retreat here into the Comfey. Building up 4 in the Lost Zone, potentially 5, depending on what we hit. We do hit Iono and Lost Vacuum. I don't hate the Iono, but I'm definitely going to grab the Lost Vacuum because it does apply some extra pressure for next turn. Means that we can get up to 8 in the Lost Zone. Because we do have 4, this will be 6. We can Lost Zone our own path to the peak and actually set up a Water Shuriken on the Greninja. Meaning that if my opponent doesn't evolve these Charmanders, we can actually start to get rid of them. So we'll play down the path to the peak just so my opponent doesn't have access to using something like that Charizard EX's ability. And we're looking pretty good here. We also do gain the ability to attach the Psychic Energy if we choose to the Giratina. Either way, I need to search out 2 waters, so I'm going to have to use both Mirage Gates in order to set up the Greninja. But there's nothing that's too bad. So we're at 4. This will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if the Comfeys stay in the active. So my opponent using that Colress, getting rid of an Ultra Ball as well as a Rare Candy. Thankfully, with us being able to play the Colress first before my opponent, it means that we get to be ahead in the Lost Zone, so it's not too bad. And we are going to be able to pivot ourselves in a good position to where Comfey will put us at 9, and then we can set up the Greninja, and if Greninja gets KO'd, we can go to 10 with another Comfey, setting up the Lost Mine or the Start Requiem, meaning that if my opponent evolves into a Charizard EX, we can just start Requiem, and we are good to deal with that. So there's the Cramorant coming down. The switch, my opponent seems like they're just going to go for a Cramorant play. At the point that we're at, having this Comfey gone is okay. I'm not too worried about that. And my opponent didn't get anything down like a Manaphy, which means that we do gain the ability to actually Water Shuriken and get rid of 2 of the Charmanders. Which means if my opponent doesn't have a Super Rod or anything and only deals with the 1 Charmander and evolves that, we actually have access to Star Requiem, which will be fantastic to us as we can put ourselves in a very good spot. So the first thing that we'll do is use the Flower Selecting ability, grabbing us the Jet Energy or the Nest Ball. I don't hate the Jet Energy. I don't think I need a Nest Ball right now. Nest Ball could be nice in the sense of grabbing things, but I need to make sure that I have some energy to play. So what we can do now is actually use the Lost Vacuum, getting rid of Manaphy, which then opens up the path to the peak, and then we open up the Mirage Gates. I'm going to use the Mirage Gates now, just so that way I don't run into a potential situation where I don't have access to something where I draw into my water energy. So we'll attach the water as well as the... Let's see, I have a Psychic in hand, so it's smarter to attach to the Giratina here. And then what we actually gain the ability to do is use the other Mirage Gate, grabbing the last 2 energy, which means we can go here and here, setting up to use that Star Requiem for next turn. We can evolve, attach a Jet Energy, and then we still have access to our supporter for turn, which means we can use the Colress here, grabbing us the Super Rod, which we are going to need, the Path to the Peak, and then we'll also grab the, considering I've used 2 Mirage Gates, I don't think I've Lost Zoned any, we can grab the other Mirage Gate just to, you know, keep ourselves in a safe situation. There's 3 energy in the discard after we use this Moonlight Shuriken. We'll draw a couple more cards real quick with concealed cards, as we do gain the ability to use Super Rod, and then we can play down that path to the peak, shutting my opponent off. We'll go with the Sableye because next turn we will be guaranteed 10, as we do have the escape rope, which means that we have the ability to use the Lost Mine and go from there. And then we'll use the Moonlight Shuriken, doing 90 to the Charmanders. And then we can get rid of the Jet Energy as well as the... I'm going to get rid of both of the waters, because if my opponent ends up doing something like leaving the Greninja active, I still have... I can search... No, I'll get rid of the Jet, because now if I shuffle back in the energy and Greninja is still active, I gain the ability to Mirage Gate and actually use the Moonlight Shuriken again, which means that all it takes is a Star Requiem from Giratina in order to punish my opponent. And we have only taken 2 prizes, which means that my opponent does not get the added benefit of Charizard being able to one-shot a Giratina, so we are in a very good spot. We have the ability to Lost Mine as well, which means that next turn we can actually try and Lost Mine something in order to take maybe 1 to 2 prizes, depending on what my opponent decides to do here. But we can kind of checkmate my opponent with getting 2 Giratina VSTARs out that can Star Requiem, and even if my opponent deals with 1, we are good to go for the others. So there is the Magma Basin coming down onto the Charmander. There's the Rare Candy into the Charizard. So my opponent going to be able to accelerate energy. And now, I don't hate the situation that we're in, but we definitely do need to find something in order to deal with the Charizard. My opponent doesn't get the benefit of being able to actually one-shot the Giratina, as I mentioned before. So if this is my opponent's only Charizard, we do have the ability to Star Requiem. And then we can do something along the lines of using Sableye. But if my opponent goes for something like a second Charmander or 2 Charmanders, we'll probably go for the Sableye play just to clean up and take 2 prizes before they have the ability to evolve. And there is the Charmander coming down. My opponent can use that Spit innocently. Thankfully, though, with the Sableye, if we take a knockout on Charmander as well as leave 10 on Comfey, it means that my opponent still can't one-shot my opponent, making our life actually a lot easier, which means we're going to be able to take 2 prizes next turn, which means that we can set up to get the Star Requiem off on the Giratina, not even having to use that Lost Impact. So there is the Spit innocently for 110. Which means that now what we can do is bench the Giratina. We can use the Super Rod. I just realized I have a Grass Energy prized, which does make things a little bit more awkward. But it's not the end of the world per se. Oh, this is kind of tough now. So what we can do, I can go for a I can actually go for a Water Shuriken and take 2 prizes. I don't hate that either. The first thing we'll do, though, is definitely use the Super Rod, shuffling back in the energies. And now we do have the ability to kind of try and figure out how we want to go. If I don't rip the Grass Energy, my opponent takes the KO on the Giratina. We run into a risky situation. So I think my best play right now is to, let's see, 70, 110. We can go there. Oh, that's awkward. Let's see, the best way to sequence this would be to... We'll use the switch cart. We'll go for the Sableye play. Just because we can punish my opponent. We do have access to things like the escape rope as well. My opponent does have the Magma Basin, but I'm not too worried about that. I think what we'll do here is we'll just use the Mirage Gate, grabbing us the Water and the Psychic. And we'll put the Psychic on to the Giratina, and then we can actually put the water onto the Greninja, which means that we gain the ability to set up a Moonlight Shuriken if my opponent decides to bench 2 more Pokemon. And then if we rip the grass off the prizes, then we have 2 things to Lost Requiem. So we're actually in a pretty solid spot, and we are at 19 cards in deck, so not too worried about that. And I meant to pivot into the Comfey. That was a mistake on my part. Okay, we're gonna have to use the escape rope. That was the biggest misplay of the year. If we hit Comfey and then hit a way to retreat, we'll be fine, but we have access to 1 switch cart, 2 more switch carts, as well as 2 more. I definitely should have gone for the flower selecting, and thankfully I'm not as punished by it as I do gain access to the switch cart. So definitely could have been a lot worse. I just wasted a switch cart there though, which is a little bit unfortunate. Make sure you always, I should have switched into the Comfey first and then use the ability and then the switch cart. So, and attach the water, have the 1 of water because Super Rod can still get it back. So first thing we'll do is do 40 onto the Charmander, and then we'll go 30, 20, 20, take a KO there. And then what we can do here, providing my opponent benches something like another Charmander, it actually might be smart for me to put the 10 on the Comfey, because if they do, then we can take 2 prizes that way. So getting us the escape rope, and then we have to hope that we can get the grass energy. And there's the Comfey, not going to allow us to, but the nice thing is that we do only have 17 cards in deck, which means that if our opponent knocks out this Giratina, we have the ability to use a Super Rod. Playing Lost Box is a little bit complicated at times. I just love how I even talked about, you know, making the play, and I ended up actually, you know, not going into the Comfey. So I definitely wasted a switch card there without having to. But it is what it is. There's not much that you can do. My opponent's sitting at 6 in the Lost Zone, and my opponent actually Lost Zone their Manaphy, which I didn't realize, so let's see. So we get access to Nest Ball. We can actually go here into the Giratina, which means that now let's see. Honestly, I think I just lost mine, and I can't KO the Cramorant, which means that my opponent's in another checkmate position, as if they go for the Giratina, we have the Sableye, so it's not looking too bad for us. So I'm going to KO the Cramorant, though, just because it's, you know, it's more fun, and my opponent has to find a way to retreat as well. So we'll go for the 90, the 30, and then we'll just put the 10 on the Comfey. Taking our prize card. Is it the grass energy? It's the water energy, so our last prize should be a grass. We have 1 grass in play, as well as 1 in the Lost Zone. The Psychics, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when it comes to the Jet energies, I believe we still have 1 in deck, but putting my opponent in a very awkward checkmate position here, we can go for the game with the Star Requiem. We have the ability to use the Moonlight Shuriken, use the Lost Mine. We could even go for something like a Cramorant if we wanted to, simply put, to swing some damage. So not looking too bad here. Thankfully, I was not punished. And what we're going to do for the sake of the video is we are going to use that escape rope and actually set up the Star Requiem in order to KO the Charizard to showcase what we were wanting to. So taking the knockout on Charizard there, our final prize being that grass energy, as we mentioned before. And with that, that was game number 1, guys. Let's head right into a game number 2 and see if we can pull off the same exact strategy. Alrighty, guys, getting into game number 2 here, going for the heads flip. And we do hit tails, so we are going to be going second most likely again. Hopefully we can get the kind of start that we had before where we have access to Colress and anything else. Looking to pull off Lost Impacts or Star Requiems. Thankfully, with the last game, we did have the ability to checkmate my opponent, and my opponent is playing Miraidon, it seems, with the lightning sleeves. So what we're going to do is actually start with the Comfey and go from there. So my opponent is playing Gardevoir, interestingly enough. Or at least it seemed... No, they're running Muse, so they are running Miraidon. Oh, they're running Jolteon. Okay, interesting. So we are going to be able to get 3 prize cards off of a Jolteon. So it definitely doesn't look too rough for us. My opponent does have access to that Mysterious Tail. So laying down the Energy Search, as well as the Arven. There's the Jolteon VMAX. And Jolteon does have the ability to do 20 to one of the bench Pokemon, and then they gain the ability to... I forget what the VMAX does, but I believe it does something pretty good. So, what we're going to do here first is use the Battle VIP Pass. I'm pretty sure that Jolteon VMAX snipes if I'm correct with it, so we're going to grab the Manaphy as well as the Greninja, just in case we do find a energy. We can bench this Comfey, use the Flower Selecting. Flower Selecting going to grab us the Switch Cart, which means we do have access to a second Comfey. So we can go for the Flower Selecting, Mirage Gate or Super Rod. I'm going to have to grab the Super Rod considering that Mirage Gate, while it is good, definitely is not going to be as good as it can be. And there's no point in putting this Giratina down right now. I don't have the ability to benefit from it, so we're just going to pass here. Not playing down the Path to the Peak because if my opponent doesn't get rid of it, we can't actually use the Radiant Greninja. So my opponent, Max Thunder, does 100 damage and then 100 damage to one of your benched Pokemon. So we'll just switch right into the Comfey. I'm going to be sacrificing some consistency, but it's not the end of the world. My opponent having a tremendous start. So there is another Jolteon V down. Thankfully, Jolteon V only has 300 HP, so we can actually try and clean up with a Sableye if we only hit for 280 with the Giratina. So we're going to have to go for the Star Requiem and then go from there. So Path to the Peak is going to be super important as it will shut off the Radiant Alakazam. So we have to hope that off of this Comfey, we can actually start to get some things going. So we get a useless Battle VIP Pass. Going for the Comfey, we do get a Colress. Colress is actually going to be really good at helping us fuel the Lost Zone, which means now we can use the Colress in order to grab a Mirage Gate. We'll grab another Colress, and then we'll grab the boss's orders, I guess. I don't know. It's a little bit tricky. I already have one Mirage Gate down. The boss's orders isn't going to do me very much right now. And providing that my opponent... Oh, this is awkward. Okay. This is how we're going to have to do it. And then we're going to have to bench the Giratina and actually... There's no extra damage that my opponent can start to benefit from. So there's no point in playing the Path to the Peak now. We are at 5. So we actually do have 7 for the next turn, which means that we can start to hit for 280, Lost Zoning 2 energy. And then we can set up something like the Sableye in order to take a knockout and go from there. So I'm not hating the way that things are going. Providing my opponent plays more Haluchas. The Path to the Peak we're not going to use just yet. I want to make sure that my opponent can't do very much next turn. So there is a Lightning Energy going on to the Jolteon. Another Jolteon VMAX coming down. And my opponent's just going to be able to consistently swing for 100. But thankfully they do have no way to actually one-shot a Giratina VSTAR. So... we are going to be able to deal 280 damage that way. And then we can actually use something like the escape rope with Sableye and things like that. So we'll promote the Giratina. Drawing for turn, we do get the switch cart. We'll use the Colress first. Colress is going to grab us. Wow, that's a lot of energy. We're going to have to just grab one of each energy, just so that way we have the ability to use the Mirage Gates. We'll use one Mirage Gate now, and there we can grab a Grass as well as a Psychic Energy. Can attach those to the Giratina. We do have the ability to attach for turn, so what we will attach is the... we'll attach the Water Energy, and then we can evolve. We do have the ability to use concealed cards, which means that we can get rid of the Grass, and we can shuffle it back in with the Super Rod. We'll bench another Giratina, go for the Nest Ball. Nest Ball is going to grab us the Comfey, just so that way we have an extra pivot. And we do have something to actually retreat, switch cart. We can Mirage Gate and then actually take a knockout on a Jolteon if my opponent decides to bring something up. And there's no point in benching the Sableye just yet. And there's nothing really else that I need to do. So what we can do at this moment is actually use the Path to the Peak, just so my opponent doesn't have any awkward things going on, and we can get rid of the, since we have the Psychic, we can get rid of the Psychic and the Water. I know I did shuffle in a Grass though, so we'll actually leave the Psychic on the Giratina, and then next turn see what we can do. Looking a bit awkward. We might have to do some hard retreat plays or go from there. So my opponent retreating in to the other Jolteon, which is completely fine. We can actually try to retreat next turn, potentially go from there. Now if my opponent has something like a Boss's Orders, we gain the ability to actually use Roxanne as well. So the best way for us to actually clean up this game is probably to just hit 280 and then finish off with Sableye, which I don't hate. And we do have the ability to actually shuffle back in some energy as well. So I think what we'll do here, let's see, if my opponent has something like Cheryl, it'll be a little bit annoying for us to deal with. But it's not the end of the world. What we'll do here is actually attach the Psychic to Sableye just to set it up. And then we'll use the Super Rod to shuffle back in the one Grass energy. I don't think I'm going to need Comfeys right now. And then we can use that Mirage Gate, grabbing us the Grass and the Water. And we can attach here. And then we can hit for 280 damage again, meaning that if my opponent doesn't play something like a Cheryl, we gain the ability to actually set up for game next turn. And we do have a Grass energy in hand, so we can actually get rid of the Grass here, which means that we'll still have access to something like that Star Requiem if we need to get ourselves out of a loop. But we might actually be able to take a total of 6 prizes in a single turn. So there's the Lost Vacuum. The only thing that I could see my opponent doing is potentially setting up something along the lines of a Lumineon into something like Cheryl, and then hopefully setting up something along the lines of a Electric Generator. My opponent going for the Painful Spoons, moving the damage to the Manaphy. And there's the Cheryl that we talked about. So I figured Cheryl was coming. Thankfully, we have the ability to use that Star Requiem, and then we can set up prizes after the fact. So there's the Forest Seal Stone. My opponent going to be able to grab any card that they choose. And it's not looking too rough for us right now. My opponent can hit for 100 and then 200. So what does this... The badge makes it so that way my opponent can attack for 1 less. Not going to be too rough for us. We do have the grass energy, and there's nothing else that we really need to do, so we can actually just use the Star Requiem to take a knockout on the Jolteon, taking 3 prizes and putting ourselves back in contention with the game. So we get Path to the Peak, Comfey, and Cramorant. And there's another Jolteon coming down and an Iono. So my opponent's going to be able to get 4 cards. We're going to be able to get 3. And we get Colress as well as Mirage Gate, so not looking too bad for us. There is the Lumineon. I'm trying to think of how I want to set up the rest of the turns. I know that I have access to the Sableye. So what I could do is actually... Actually, what we're going to do is use the Sableye. We're going to just ignore this Jolteon. We're going to use the Sableye, which will allow us to spread damage to the Lumineon. We can put 120 on it, which means then all we need is 50 and 60. So my opponent retreating into the Hawlucha. I don't hate it. I understand it. So we'll use that Colress Experiment, getting us the Colress Experiment, Iono, and the Jet Energy. So my opponent is going to be able to actually KO the Manaphy next turn. And my opponent can actually take 4 prizes, potentially. Which is going to be super awkward, because they can move the damage off, but they'll actually be short. So... it's not looking too rough for us. So we'll grab the Colress and the Iono. We'll put the Jet Energy on the Comfey just so that way we can retreat. Then a couple more cards in the deck. Hit the Flower Selecting. We'll grab the Boss's Orders. So let's see. My opponent has the Boss's Orders in hand. I know this. But I don't think that they're in the most solid position. We could put 20 on the Jolteon. 20 on the Jolteon. So that'd be 40. We could take a knockout here. Put the rest on the Lumineon. That way a Sableye or a Giratina can clean it up. And I actually don't hate that idea. So we can use the Lost Mine. Lost Mine will allow us to, let's see, so if we go 20, 20, 20, that leaves 60, which means that there's 110. Or if we go 20, 20, 60, and then 40, that leaves 130, which means that the Lumineon can't be KO'd. So I think what I have to do here is just hope that my opponent doesn't have the V-Star or any other ways to get things going. And as we know, we do have the Boss's Orders in hand. So we can put 20, and then we'll go 40, 60, and then we'll go 20, 10, and I guess the rest here on the Lumineon. The Lumineon still has 130, so it's still awkward for us. That is definitely something I should have figured out. But, you know, when the timer's going down, there's not too much you can do. So there is the Hawlucha, meaning my opponent is going to be able to take a KO on the Manaphy, putting 10 on the Giratina. And now I need to hope that I find a way to get an energy for next turn, because my opponent is potentially going to be able to take a knockout. So there's the Boss's Orders. Boss's Orders going into the Giratina. And I believe that we have the ability to actually thin some cards. So we'll use the Nest Ball, seeing what is in deck. And we do have a Psychic Energy. So we have the Psychic Energy as well as a Switch Cart and everything else that we may need. We do have access to the Path to the Peak. So we are going to have to punish my opponent and figure out the rest. So the first thing that we can do, let's see. We have to course experiment, hopefully hitting Super Rod and an energy, and we actually do. Let's see how many energy in here. There's 1 jet energy. So we can try and set up for the next turn. We'll grab the Path to the Peak just to shut off my opponent being able to use something like the Radiant Alakazam. Their bench is full, so it's not the end of the world for us. So we can just grab these energies. We can... I should have grabbed the Jet Energy, because next turn I could Jet Energy plus Boss. But all is well. We'll play down the Path to the Peak, and then from here, just pass. I could have grabbed the other energy as well, because next turn I could have used something like the Mirage Gate, grabbing 1 energy. But all we need is the ability to just draw a switching out. My opponent plays the Iono, giving us 2 cards, and we do get the switch card, which means that we can go into Sableye and actually take a knockout on Hawlucha and then set up damage on the other Hawlucha or something like the Lumineon. So there's the Elemental badge. My opponent passes. So we get a Giratina VSTAR. I'm not going to give my opponent the chance to actually bench more Pokemon. I think I'm just going to win with the Sableye. So we can evolve into that Giratina VSTAR, and we actually do have access to the Roxanne as well. So Roxanne definitely going to be a good card for next turn. We could Roxanne now, that way we have, you know, the chance to get Boss, but I think we're in a good enough spot. My opponent has to find a way to deal 10 damage to this Giratina, as well as attack, as well as retreat, and I don't think they're going to do that off of 2 cards. So we're safe to use the Lost Mine, meaning that what we can do is we can set up the Lumineon and then just go from there. So putting the Lumineon to 160, not letting my opponent have anything on the bench. So my opponent has to find a way to retreat, as well as an evolution, as well as an energy, and a way to move 10 damage. So I don't think that that's going to be very possible, considering that their bench is full. There's the Jolteon VMAX. There is the Energy Search, grabbing a Lightning Energy, and even if they do take a KO, we're not at the end of the ropes. We do have access to that Roxanne, which will let us see some more cards, and then we can actually try and set up another Sableye. So my opponent going for the Ultra Ball, grabbing the other Hawlucha, and I don't think that there's a way for my opponent to actually set up their board. And there's the Painful Spoons. Trying to figure out exactly how they want to move their damage around. And we know that we have access to 1 more Mirage Gate, as well as a Super Rod, and I believe there's a Sableye in the deck too. So, you know, the sense of how things are going, if this Sableye got knocked out, I'm pretty certain we'd be able to set up another one. So definitely not the end of the world. There may have been times when I could have sequenced this, you know, section better, but at the end of the day, we still have the chance to get the knockout. So my opponent using that Painful Spoons, and it seems as though, you know, they're trying to figure out what to do, but there's nothing that's really going to work out for them. And it seems like they may have gotten stuck. So, wait, how did my opponent just magically move 20 damage and create 20 damage on Giratina? Am I missing something? That's not how that's supposed to work. Because Painful Spoon says you can move 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon, so just adding damage to Giratina doesn't make much sense, and I don't think that there was 20 damage anywhere else. Unless I'm blind. In that case, it does make sense, but just waiting for my opponent here. Going to speed up the process, speed up this part of the video, just so that way you guys can, you know, see when we act. Oh, speaking of which, all right. So we do get our turn, which means that if we did play something like the Roxanne, let's see if we would have gotten the Sableye to pull off. And we did. We have the Super Oddly Mirage Gate, the Sableye, so definitely not the end of the world. Which means that we can use that Lost Mine and actually put 10, put 70 onto the Hawlucha, and then just put the rest here. So taking 3 prizes in a single turn, getting us the win, and going like that. So, with that being said, guys, I want to thank you for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and if you enjoyed the video, share it with a friend. We're almost at 500 subscribers, so I can't thank you guys more for all of the support. So with that being said, I will catch you guys in tomorrow's episode. Later.